The 1980s were a decade drenched in neon, powered by synthesizers, and obsessed with the future. Everything was bold, experimental, and weird. And nowhere was that weirdness more spectacular than in the world of concept cars, when automakers stopped worrying about practicality and started dreaming of a sci-fi future. Coming out of the fuel crisis-stricken 70s, efficiency became a buzzword. But so did technology. Designers embraced wind tunnel curves, electronic gadgets, and interiors that felt more like spaceship cockpits than car cabins. These concept cars weren't made to be driven. They were made to inspire, to shock, to ask what if. And while most of these wild machines never made it to the production line, they left behind something even better, a glimpse into an alternate automotive universe. Today we're looking at 18 of the weirdest concept cars from the 1980s. Kicking off the list is the Briggs & Stratton hybrid from 1980. Yes, that Briggs & Stratton, the company better known for lawnmower engines than futuristic eco-cars. This concept was a six-wheeled, boxy little hatchback that resembled a rolling science experiment more than a sleek commuter. Under the hood, or rather somewhere inside that odd brick-like body, it packed an 18-horsepower air-cooled twin-cylinder gasoline engine, basically the same one you'd find in a heavy-duty lawnmower. But what made it a hybrid was its 8-horsepower electric motor, which drew power from a hefty set of 10 lead-acid batteries stashed under the trunk. That added weight explains the 6 wheels, 4 in the back, just to keep it stable. It even had regenerative braking, which was cutting-edge tech for the time. The Ford Pinto suspension added a touch of regular car DNA, but let's be honest, this was never intended to hit dealerships. With a top speed of 60 miles per hour and a look only an engineer could love, it served more as a rolling demo of efficiency potential than a real production contender. Briggs & Stratton never planned to mass-produce it. The idea was to spark innovation and attention. The Citroen Xenia from 1981 was a concept that looked like a minivan beamed in from the future, or maybe from the cleaning aisle at Target. Imagine a sleek, aerodynamic capsule with a massive glass canopy and curves in all the right places. Or maybe not. It was Citroen's take on a people carrier aimed at the US market long before minivans became a common sight here. The Xenia was pretty radical. It had the vibe of a dustbuster vacuum cleaner, which, as weird as it sounds, became a nickname for early minivans like the Chevy Lumina APV. The design prioritized aerodynamics and passenger comfort, but it was way ahead of its time. Americans were still obsessed with big, boxy vans like the Dodge Caravan, and Citroen didn't have the dealership network or brand power in the States to make a serious push. The Xenia never made it past the concept stage, although it did foreshadow the MPV craze of the late 80s and 90s. At number 3 on our list is the Ford Probe 3, an absolute aero nerd's dream. This was Ford's stab at showing just how slippery a car's shape could be. It had a drag coefficient of 0.22, which even by today's standards is impressive. How? Well, Ford went all in. Flush wheel covers, a smooth underbody, rain gutters hidden inside the body panels, and even a retractable belly pan to create ground effects. It looked more like a UFO compared to Ford's usual boxy offerings from that era. The Probe 3 wasn't electric, it still relied on a traditional gasoline engine, but the point was to maximize efficiency through aerodynamics. Unsurprisingly, it never made it to production as is. The tech was too expensive and weird for mainstream buyers, but the design language didn't go to waste. It heavily influenced the styling of Ford Sierra in Europe and the Merkur XR4 Ti in the US. Imagine taking a quintessential American sports car, a C4 Chevrolet Corvette, and handing it over to an Italian design house known for sleek, often avant-garde styling, Bertone. That's exactly what the Ramaro concept was all about. Based on a C4 Corvette chassis, Bertone completely rebodied it into this striking, wedge-shaped coupe, painted in a distinctive green color. Ramaro means green lizard in Italian, fittingly. The design itself was pretty wild, especially for a Corvette. It featured a large glass roof that would have provided occupants with a great view, and perhaps its most notable weird factor was the doors. Instead of swinging outwards, they slid forward along the side of the car, like the sliding doors that would become ubiquitous on minivans. There was still plenty of power under the hood from the Corvette's mid-mounted V8 engine, keeping performance hard, but the exterior was a complete departure. So why didn't it happen? Well, it was primarily built by Bertone to showcase their design capabilities and vision, particularly targeting a European aesthetic. Chevrolet, on the other hand, has been and remains committed to the distinctly American styling and feel of the Corvette. While the Ramaro was a fascinating cross-cultural experiment, it was never intended to replace or directly evolve the production Corvette. It was more of a statement piece about what could be done with the underlying platform from a different design perspective. Ultimately, it simply didn't align with Chevy's brand identity for their flagship sports car. Now let's take a look at the Honda HPX from 1984. This was Honda dipping its toes into serious supercar territory with a design penned by none other than the legendary Italian design firm Pininfarina. And boy, did it look like something from the future. The HPX had that classic mid-1980s wedge shape, incredibly low-slung and aerodynamic. Its most distinctive feature, and a major part of its weird factor, was the fighter jet-like canopy that covered the entire cockpit, giving the driver and passenger a panoramic view, but making entry and exit look like a carefully choreographed maneuver. Powering the sleek machine was a 2.0-liter V6 engine. Inside it was equally futuristic, featuring early digital displays and even incorporating drive-by-wire technology for the steering and throttle. Pretty cutting-edge stuff for 1984. The extreme angles and that prominent canopy really made it look less like a car and more like a spaceship on wheels. So why didn't this spaceship take flight into production? Primarily, it was deemed too expensive and impractical to build for the mass market. While it was a bold statement of Honda's engineering and design ambition, the company ultimately decided to focus its resources and development efforts on a different kind of sports car, the NSX. The NSX, which arrived a few years later, was still a high-performance, mid-engine sports car, but was designed to be much more practical and attainable than the extreme HPX concept. Moving on to 1985, we find the MGEXE. This concept was a clear attempt by British Leyland, MG's parent company at the time, to inject some serious sportiness and modernity back into the MG brand, which had a rich history but needed a forward-looking vision. The EXE was a sleek, low-profile coupe with smooth lines and pop-up headlights, which were very much in vogue in the 80s for sports cars. Underneath its stylish bodywork lay a 3.0-liter V6 engine designed to deliver the kind of performance necessary to compete in the sporty coupe market. Its weird factor, or perhaps more accurately its intriguing aspect, was that it bore a striking resemblance in its proportions and overall look to early prototype of the Jaguar XJ220 supercar, which wouldn't debut in production form until the early 90s. For MG, a brand often associated with more modest roadsters, the EXE looked unusually futuristic and high performance. Sadly, the EXE never progressed beyond the concept stage. The primary reason was the troubled financial state of British Leyland in the mid-1980s. The company was facing significant challenges and had to focus its limited resources on developing and producing more mass-market, profitable vehicles rather than investing in a potentially niche, high-tech sports coupe like the EXE. No matter how promising it looked for the MG brand, it remained a tantalizing glimpse of what could have been for MG. Now for something theatrical, the Buick Wildcat concept from 1985. This was Buick showing a side of itself that was anything but the traditional luxury sedan maker people knew. The Wildcat was envisioned as a high-performance, mid-engine supercar. Its body was constructed from lightweight carbon fiber, an exotic material for a car in '85. Power came from a potent 3.8-liter V6 engine. The most visually stunning feature, and definitely weirdest, was the massive tilting canopy that covered the entire cabin, lifting up and forward to allow entry and exit. With that canopy and the exposed engine visible through the rear, it gave off serious supercar vibes, even looking somewhat akin to what a Bugatti Veyron would do decades later with its exposed engine bay. Inside, it continued the futuristic theme with a spokeless steering wheel and multiple digital displays. Why did this Wildcat stay in the concept cage? It was simply too radical and too far removed from Buick's established brand identity, which was firmly focused on comfortable luxury sedans and coupes. The Wildcat was built primarily as a technological showcase for GM's advanced V6 engine and materials technology, not as a serious proposal for a production Buick model. It was a fantastic halo car to demonstrate what Buick could do, but it didn't align with their market strategy at all. Mazda was known for pushing boundaries, especially with its rotary engines, and the Mazda MX-03 concept from 1985 was a perfect example of that, packed with advanced tech. This was a sleek coupe that featured both four-wheel drive and four-wheel steering, technologies that were quite cutting-edge at the time. Under the hood was a 2.0-liter rotary engine, a power plant on which Mazda had invested heavily. The interior was where the real weird factor kicked in. It had a transparent dashboard that allowed you to see some of the workings beneath, and perhaps most bizarrely, a belt-like steering wheel instead of a traditional round one, combined with drive-by-wire steering. It truly felt like a design straight out of a science fiction movie about the near future. Why didn't this technological marvel reach production? The complexity and cost associated with the rotary engine were significant factors, especially for a potentially low-volume, high-tech model like this. While Mazda loved the rotary, they ultimately decided to focus their sports car efforts on the more conventional, yet still fantastic RX-7, which utilized a rotary engine within a more traditional and commercially viable package. The MX-03 served as a test bed for advanced technologies and design ideas, some of which may have influenced later Mazda models. However, the concept car itself was deemed too complex and expensive for production. Citroen has always been known for pushing boundaries with design and technology, and the Zanthia concept from 1986 was no exception. This was their idea of a futuristic sedan, featuring a remarkably low, smooth, and aerodynamic profile that stood out quite differently from many cars on the road at the time. Underneath that sleek skin, it packed some serious tech, including an active suspension system, which was pretty cutting edge back then, designed to keep the ride incredibly smooth and controlled. Inside, it had a very 80s take on a high-tech interior, featuring a fully digital dashboard. The weird factor here, perhaps, was how this very smooth, almost blob-like shape and its tech-heavy interior contrasted with some of the quirkier, more mechanically exposed designs for which Citroen had been known. It felt nearly too conventional in its smoothness, yet too radical in its technology for the brand's established character at the time. So why didn't the Zanthia become a production model? Primarily, the technologies it showcased, particularly the advanced active suspension and integrated digital systems, were simply too complex and expensive for mass production in 1986. Citroen, facing the realities of the market, focused its resources on developing more practical and commercially viable models, such as the popular and successful BX sedan and wagon, rather than pursuing the ambitious and costly vision of the Zanthia. It remained an intriguing study of future possibilities. Next, we have a truly wild one from Oldsmobile of all brands, the Inca's concept from 1986. This was a creation by the famous Italian design house Ital Design, and it bore no resemblance to any Oldsmobile you'd ever seen before or since. The Inca was designed as a high-performance coupe, featuring dramatic gull-wing doors that open upwards, like those of a supercar. It was powered by GM's 2.3-liter quad-4 engine, a modern and powerful four-cylinder for the time. Step inside and the weird factor hits you immediately. The interior was designed just like a fighter jet cockpit. It featured a steering yoke instead of a traditional wheel and was absolutely covered in buttons and multiple screens, looking incredibly futuristic and complex. It genuinely resembled a spaceship's control center. The reason the Incas didn't happen is pretty straightforward. It was simply far too radical for Oldsmobile's very conservative brand image and customer base in the 1980s. Oldsmobile was known for comfortable, traditional American cars, not mid-engine coupes with gull-wing doors and aircraft controls. The Incas was a fascinating design exercise that showcased what was technically possible and pushed boundaries, but it had absolutely no place in Oldsmobile's production lineup or market strategy. Moving into 1987, let's have a look at the Mitsubishi HSR concept. HSR stood for Highly Sophisticated Transport Research, and this car was packed with exactly that, highly sophisticated research into future automotive technology. The HSR was a sleek, low-slung coupe designed as a test bed for advanced systems. It featured active aerodynamics with body panels that could change shape depending on speed and driving conditions, similar to low, thick spoilers and flaps that moved automatically. It also had four-wheel steering for enhanced maneuverability and stability. Under the hood was a 2.0-liter turbocharged engine. One of its coolest and perhaps weirdest features at the time was the use of pop-up cameras instead of traditional side mirrors, which fed images to screens inside the cabin. This was decades before camera-based mirrors started appearing on production cars. Why didn't the HSR reach production? The primary barrier was the sheer complexity and cost of the technologies it demonstrated. Active aerodynamics and reliable, production-ready camera mirror systems were costly and unproven for mass-market applications in 1987. The HSR was explicitly a research vehicle, designed to explore the potential of these advanced systems rather than being a preview of a specific production model. It was too far ahead of its time for commercial viability. Another oddball from 1987 was the Pontiac Pursuit concept. In the 80s, Pontiac was trying to position itself as GM's performance and technology division, and the Pursuit was a bold statement of that ambition. It was a sleek, aerodynamic coupe featuring a 2.0-liter turbocharged four-cylinder engine that produced a healthy 200 horsepower, a strong output for a four-cylinder engine at the time. It incorporated drive-by-wire technology, meaning the steering and throttle inputs were transmitted electronically rather than through mechanical linkages. The interior continued the high-tech theme with digital gauges and a heads-up display projecting information onto the windshield. The weird factor was centered on the driver interface, particularly the steering wheel, which was covered in buttons resembling a calculator or a video game controller more than a traditional steering wheel. So why didn't Pontiac pursue putting this concept into production? Like many advanced concepts of the era, the technologies it featured, especially the drive-by-wire system and the complex control interfaces, were too costly and not yet mature enough for mass production reliability. Pontiac also focused its resources on developing models that were more central to its brand at the time, such as the Trans Sports minivan and the evolution of the Firebird sports car. The Pursuit was a fascinating glimpse into a potential high-tech future for Pontiac, but it remained a concept due to its expense and technological complexity. Next up is the Lancia Hit concept from 1988, another creation from the Italian design house Bertone. Lancia, known for its rallying heritage and unique road cars, explored a very sharp, angular design language with the Hit. This was a coupe featuring geometric panels and a very pronounced wedge shape, powered by a 2.0-liter turbocharged engine. Inside, it was just as futuristic, with one of its standout features being an early touchscreen interface for controlling various functions, alongside a rather unusual single-spoke steering wheel. Its weird factor was that combination of its almost science fiction Battlestar Galactica-esque exterior style styling with the then nascent and likely wildly impractical touchscreen technology in the interior. It looked like it drove straight off a futuristic movie set. So why didn't the Lancia Hit hit production? Lancia, as a brand, was facing significant financial struggles in the late 1980s under the Fiat Group umbrella. Developing and producing such a technologically advanced and niche concept car would have been incredibly expensive and a significant risk for a company trying to stabilize its core business. It was simply too impractical and too far removed from the kind of vehicles Lancia needed to focus on to survive. It remained a bold design statement from Bertone rather than a viable future product for Lancia. Moving on, we have the Cadillac Voyage concept from 1988. This was Cadillac's vision for a future full-size luxury sedan with a focus on aerodynamics to enhance efficiency and refinement. The Voyage featured a remarkably sleek and aerodynamic profile for a large sedan of that era, powered by a 4.5-liter V8 engine and equipped with advanced, for the time, all-wheel drive. The interior was packed with luxury features and technology, including digital displays and early heated and cooled seats. Its weird factor was arguably the juxtaposition of full-size American luxury dimensions with a surprisingly aerodynamic, almost minivan-like sleekness in its overall shape. It was an unusual blend of traditional Cadillac scale with modern aero thinking. Although the Voyage concept itself was not produced, it had a significant influence on Cadillac's production models. The sleek, aerodynamic shape directly inspired the design of the 1993 Cadillac Fleetwood sedan. However, the production Fleetwood didn't adopt all of the concept's advanced technology, like the all-wheel drive or the full suite of digital features, primarily due to cost constraints for a mass-market luxury car. The Voyage pointed the way for Cadillac's future design language, but proved too expensive to build with all its concept tech intact. Here's a truly unique and somewhat baffling concept: the 1988 GMC Centaur. This vehicle was an attempt to blend the utility of a pickup truck with a passenger-carrying capability and front-end design of a minivan. The design was certainly unconventional, resembling a minivan grafted onto a pickup bed, with a 3.0-liter straight-six engine mounted under the bed itself, reminiscent of the old Chevrolet Corvair Ram-side pickup. It also featured four-wheel steering to aid maneuverability. Its weird factor was undeniable. The name Centaur, the mythical half-man, half-horse creature, perfectly fit its bizarre half-van, half-pickup body style. It was a genuinely impractical and visually jarring combination. Unsurprisingly, the GMC Centaur did not reach production. It was simply too niche and too bizarrely impractical for the mainstream truck or van market. GM's focus was firmly on developing and selling conventional, well-defined pickup trucks and minivans, which had clear market segments. The Centaur was a curious experiment in merging two disparate vehicle types, but it didn't offer a compelling enough case for production compared to traditional designs. Stepping into a more dystopian vision, we have the Ford Splash concept from 1988. This vehicle was designed with an escape from New York style future in mind, built to look tough and capable of surviving in a harsh urban environment. The Splash was a boxy SUV with a high ground clearance and aggressive armored styling. Its most distinctive feature, contributing heavily to its weird factor, was the integrated steel shutters that could cover the windows, giving it a fortified, almost menacing look. The whole design was intentionally over the top, reflecting a pessimistic view of the future. Why didn't the Ford Splash splash into showrooms? It was simply too extreme and too tied to a specific, dark future scenario that wasn't relevant to the actual automotive market. Ford's focus in the late 1980s and early 1990s was on developing practical and versatile SUVs for a growing mainstream market, which led to the highly successful Ford Explorer. The Splash was a thematic concept, a design exercise in a particular style, rather than a realistic proposal for a production vehicle. Following up on the HSR concept from 1987, Mitsubishi presented the HSR2 in 1989, representing an evolution of their highly sophisticated transport research. The HSR2 refined the active aerodynamic concepts of its predecessor, with even more sophisticated body panels that adjusted automatically. It was also powered by a 2.0-liter turbocharged engine and featured advanced electronics, including an updated camera-based vision system in place of mirrors. A superb addition was a retractable roof panel. Its weird factor continued the HSR's theme of being incredibly advanced and dynamic, with its shape-shifting bodywork and sci-fi technology making it look like something that could transform, akin to a transformer. Like the original HSR, the HSR2 remained a concept primarily due to the high cost and complexity of its advanced technologies. While it showcased incredible engineering capability, bringing features like fully active aerodynamics and camera mirrors to production in 1989 was simply not economically viable for a mainstream manufacturer. Mitsubishi chose to focus its sports car efforts on the forthcoming 3000 GT, a high-tech but ultimately more conventional sports car that entered production a few years later. The HSR concepts were invaluable testbeds, but not production prototypes. And last for today, let's wrap up with the Pontiac Stinger concept from 1989. This was Pontiac's attempt to capture the youth market with a versatile, actively focused vehicle. The Stinger was designed as an open-air SUV-like vehicle with a 3.0-liter engine. Its key features, contributing significantly to its weird factor, were the removable body panels and an array of integrated accessories designed for an active lifestyle. These included a built-in vacuum cleaner, a radio, a portable camp stove, and even a garden hose. It was intended to be the ultimate Swiss Army knife on wheels for young adventurers, though the practicality of some of these add-ons was questionable. The Pontiac Stinger didn't make it beyond the concept stage, mainly because it was too gimmicky and a bit too niche in its focus. While the idea of a versatile, fun vehicle was sound, the execution with the numerous integrated accessories felt more like a novelty than serious utility. Pontiac's resources were directed towards more mainstream and commercially promising vehicles, such as the development and launch of the Transport minivan, which offered a more practical form of versatility for families. The Stinger was a fun, quirky idea, but not a viable production car. Alright, that wraps up our look at some truly wild 1980s concept cars. That decade was a hotbed of bold, sometimes bizarre ideas, offering us everything from six-wheeled creations and fighter jet canopies to shape-shifting aerodynamics and sci-fi interiors packed with cutting-edge technology, such as active suspension and digital displays. While most of these fantastic visions never reached production lines, often because they were too expensive or impractical, many still influenced later cars. For instance, the Ford Probe 3's aerodynamic shaping foreshadowed future Fords, and the Cadillac Voyage previewed the 90s Fleetwood. The 80s left a legacy of pushing boundaries in automotive design. Which of these eccentric concepts blew your mind the most? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into 80s weirdness, give us a like, subscribe for more car history, and check out our other videos.